Thank you for joining us today. This is our fourth low-res. Can you imagine? It's only been a span of like a month and a half, right, Rashad?
Yeah.
And here we are at number 4, and we're really glad to be able to put this one together because we know how important this is for so many of you out there. Today's session is about emergency funding for COVID-affected newsrooms. Basically, we'll be asking the question, what money's out there, and also how do you ask for it? So today we've got a really great lineup of speakers for you. Thank you for joining us. We've got Shuey, Rasmus, Lars, Alex, Prue. We'll do a proper introduction to all of them later on. Very quickly, for those of you who've never heard of Splice before and want to learn a little bit more about what we do, we care a lot about the transformation of media, especially in Asia. We believe that the transformation that we want to see when it comes to media requires the entry of diverse media startups. And so our mission here is to help drive radical change by supporting bold and forward-looking media startups in this region. So low-res is our way of celebrating what people are doing in spite of COVID. We know that this is a very difficult time for many newsrooms and many journalists out there. We care about where, all this is going. Rashad.
Yes. So, thanks for being part of this fourth installment. I think we've had one on an average of every 2 weeks or so since March. The first one was just a general check-in, which we did about 7 people in Europe and 7 people in Asia, and everybody just said hi, basically, and we just wanted to find out how everyone was doing. The second one we did with MDIF, based on their really interesting set of their report and their set of tips on the financial impact of COVID on media and organizations. Whoa, Alex. We've got, okay,
I've just muted her.
That's fine. The financial impact of COVID on media organizations. Number 3 was about how freelancers were actually, productizing, pivoting, doing new things in this time. And this one is all about grants and funds. As you know, we're speaking to 5 really wonderful people whose opinions we respect. People who have both, incredible intellect in the space and incredible compassion, which are great ways to actually, which are probably the only ways to function in this space. And moving on, here are some quick numbers. This is number 4. We've had over 580. Thank you, so many of you, for coming back, and thank you so many of you for being here for the first time. I think with today's 5, we'll get to about 26 speakers. We're very excited that we've got the gender balance right, and we're spanning 4 continents so far, 12 hours, and hopefully, as we can see, we're all practicing good social distancing measures. We're all in good company. You guys are from everywhere. We've got some people we really respect here. Again, from people from 4 continents, a whole lot of friends, some clients, some partners, some collaborators, almost all of you are advisors to us at some point or other in our careers. And we're absolutely delighted to be doing this in such august company. All right. And finally, to our friends at IMS, thank you so much, not just for sponsoring this show, but for the work that you do championing this community all over the world. Thank you for the work that you guys do. Alan.
So very quickly around the ground rules for the next 2 hours. If you are on Twitter, please use the Splice Low-Res hashtag. If you are going to speak, make sure you are on a microphone or a headphone at least. Any kind of cheap earbuds would do the trick. Try to sit in front of a room with good light. Also, if you're engaging in a conversation, please leave your comments in the chat box itself. This is where you can leave your questions and the links to stuff that you want to share with this community. Make sure you put yourself on mute when you're not speaking, just so we can reduce the amount of noise that's out there. Once again, this video will be made available on our YouTube channel, so watch for that within the next 24 hours after we wrap this one up. We'll also be sending out a feedback form once all of this is over. Please send your feedback so that we know how we can make this better. We want to keep doing this with you, so your feedback is always useful. Watch out for a bit of porn bombing, which is a thing that we were struggling with on the last one. We had someone come in and basically started sharing their screen. So if you see anything like that, this is, well, unfortunately, this is just modern day graffiti. So nothing to see there. We'll just get on with it. The best we can do is to throw that person off this group. But perhaps most importantly, be generous and share your ideas and share your thoughts. We're all trying to figure this stuff out. We know it's a very difficult time for many of you. So approach all this with great generosity. So for the program for the next 2 hours, we're currently in the first stage where we're doing the introductions. You're going to hear from our speakers right after this. Each speaker will get 10 minutes to talk about the work that you do, why it matters to them, where the gaps are when it comes to the funding space, and also to give you a bit more information about how to apply for some of the grants. So these will be a 10-minute presentation followed by a quick 5-minute Q&A from all of you. And then we'll go to the next speaker and the next speaker and the next speaker. So we've got 5 speakers lined up. At the end of all of that, we'll do another Q&A round so that you get to ask all 5 speakers questions that you have lingering in your minds. And to close off the last 30 minutes of the show, we're going to do a BYOB, bring your own online beverage. It's beer o'clock here in Asia, so some of us, will be cracking out our beers. But feel free to bring any kind of beverage that you want, and then we'll close the show. All right. So let's kick this off. Rashad.
So wow, look at that. Simon said that there's, including his baby, we have 100 people on this call.
That's amazing.
At one go, I think that's really something. We had 200 people sign up. Hey, so I'm just going to go quickly down. All of you must know these people. These are people we look up to. These are our heroes and also our friends. We're going to kick things off with Shui. We go to Rasmus. We'll then go to Lars, then Alex, and then Prue. Just before Shui jumps in, Shui, if you're ready, be ready. But I just wanted to say a few words about Shui. Shui is from OSF. Shui and I and Alan have possibly eaten many wonderful meals in Singapore, satay in Singapore. There was dal bhat in Kathmandu. There was also beef tartar in Warsaw with Jakub Gornicki of Outriders. Shu is one of the people we consider an advisor, a guide, she's the person we turn to when we want to try out hideous ideas that may not ever work. She's analytical, she's compassionate, and she's a true friend of the community. Shui, all yours.
My goodness, thank you so much, Rashad. And yes, Jakub, we can confirm the beef. Excellent. Okay, thank you so much for inviting me to speak here, and also thank you so much for providing the space and Low-Res. It's been a wonderful community that I've been catching up on YouTube, and it's been absolutely brilliant. So Alan and Rashad asked me to speak about what we do at Open Society, how we're responding to the emergency, and so on. And just quickly to explain for those of you who don't know what OSF or Open Society Foundations is, we're a very, very, very large organization, a philanthropic network which spans across the globe and 1,600 people. And our mission is to support vibrant, tolerant societies and governments which are accountable to their citizens. We work across around 14 different thematic programs. So for example, journalism is just one of them. We also work across health, migration, human rights, justice, and so on. Alan's very helpfully shared a link there in the chat. And we also work geographically in specific country locations and regionally. So we have different offices in around 50 countries around the world. I'm kind of losing count on how many different locations we're present in. So that's OSF as a whole. I work at the Programme on Independent Journalism, and my colleague Sue is here as well in the call. And our mission is pretty simple. It's in our name. We support independent journalism for a very broad definition of journalism. We know that today, information and journalism, it doesn't really matter what the medium is, but we really care about how it's produced. We don't matter whether or not it's on digital, whether or not it's on traditional broadcast means, but we really do care about how it's done and who it's for, as long as the information that is produced is verified, as long as it provides some degree of context, it explains, and is relevant and engaging to an audience, and is in some way in service of informing the public. So that's our mission within OSF. So the work that we do really broadly falls into three big areas, and we call them portfolios in our program. And these are the three pillars of work that we work on. The first area is around freedom and safety, and that is around providing support to help enable the environment for journalism so that it can thrive, it's less hostile, and helping people who are working on the front lines to do their jobs a bit better. And that involves making big grants to organizations that are international, that span the globe, such as the Committee to Protect Journalists, as well as more local and grassroots initiatives working on the ground in different regions around the world. I should say that our program is actually global, and we work pretty much everywhere, with perhaps the exception of Western Europe and the United States. So the second big portfolio of work that we have is around investigative journalism, and that is around providing support to specialized organizations and networks that produce investigative journalism, spanning the most sort of cutting edge computer-assisted and data techniques to the most sort of basic verification along those lines. So that's investigative journalism. The third area of work, the third big portfolio that we have, is what we call opening journalism, and this is where I work with a small team. And here we really try to support newsrooms and initiatives that are making the best use of digital, of technology, of design, and other methodologies in ways to best serve their audience and produce the information that we talked about that we call journalism. And here this includes support to startups. Some of our partners are here in this call, so it's really nice to see you guys. And experimental projects that are not necessarily around the publishing of journalism, but maybe around supporting products that will help enable your journalism operation to survive. So we have one grantee in our portfolio, which is running a cafe. Another is another sort of product that helps support the journalism operation and make it more financially sustainable. Across our entire program, we support organizations that range from two people grassroots collectives, to 200-person organizations. Some are grassroots initiatives which aren't registered yet, informal collectives. Some are non-profit organizations which are registered, and some are for-profit companies. So it's a real range of organizations that we support. So I mentioned that PIJ, the Programme on Independent Journalism, works within OSF. So we're actually quite a small to medium-sized program within a vast network. We're 14 people in our team in an entire organization of 1,600. And as you guys may know or may not know, other parts of Open Society Foundations also supports journalism, but in a slightly different way to the way we work. So some of you may know that other programs within OSF, such as the Public Health Programme or the Justice Initiative or the Migration Initiative, will support reporting projects that publishers to report on specific topics, for example, health. I guess we're all health reporters now, women, rights-based things, and so on. What we do that's different from other parts of OSF is that we're more editorial agnostic, because independent journalism is in the name of our program. We care about independence and editorial independence. So what our grantees publish is really not up to us. But what we do care about is how they do it, and the way that our grantees report and publish meets certain standards and criteria. We really make it sort of something that's, we make it something that we're proud of, that you know, our grantees are, we really don't sort of put any emphasis on what our grantees publish, and we really sort of choose the organizations we work with based on their mission and values that aligns with ours. So what is OSF doing in response to the COVID emergency and the pandemic? So as a whole, as the entire organization, some of you may have read that we have made $130 million available in central reserves across the entire organization. This is for the entire organization of 1,600 people that spans across different portfolio programs and geographies. And these central reserves have come from, have been made from existing budgets, which which have come from grants that no longer can happen because of the pandemic, as well as our travel and operational budgets. So it's kind of been I guess it's metaphorically digging around in the back of our sofas for this funding. And this central reserve is split into two phases, the first of which is the immediate response for frontline workers. And that's really around health, marginalized communities, and any of those areas that are more on the front lines of things. That has already been allocated, and that is intended for a very short-term emergency support. The second phase of this reserve, the bigger portion, which we're currently designing now, is addressing what we like to think of as the long game. And this is going to be focused on civil society in the global south. And at the moment, we're working with our regional foundations and regional programs to design these per geography, because they will be different in different areas. As I said, we're currently designing this, and so we are really looking to you guys for your ideas to help us do this. So that's OSF as a whole. Within our program, within the program on independent journalism, what we've been doing as a response to the emergency for the last couple of months is essentially we've been helping triage and triaging our existing grantees and helping them to pivot. And this involves providing emergency support for our existing cohort of grantees who need to plug a financial gap and keep the lights on. Thank you so much, guys, for the Splice lights on analysis, by the way. But also to help organizations within our existing cohort to pivot to Plan B. And especially this includes some of our freedom and safety grantees, which provide PPE and equipment for reporters on the ground, and are helping to design manuals and so on so that reporters can operate safely. So as I said, we're helping to design this phase 2 of our emergency response for COVID. And we want to sort of hear your ideas, and we want to hear them as it pertains to the region. And as a reminder, this is about the long game, about what's not just happening now, but what's going to happen in 6 months, what's going to happen in 9 months. We want to know really what's going to be missing from the information landscape, what stories are not going to be reported, what stories are being swept under the rug while all this sideshow is happening. Who needs the information the most? Who needs this information, and maybe what areas of what segments of society are being ignored because of whatever is happening. How are you going to serve these audiences? And what innovative methods and technologies and tools are you going to employ to make sure that whatever reporting you're going to do or whatever product you're going to make is going to be relevant and engaging for the people that you serve? And then finally, how is what you're going to do now going to help advance your mission, your operation and society in the next 6, 9, 12 months? So the reason we've decided to do more of this long game, it's not just because it's consistent with our strategy to provide organizational support to initiatives that are aligned with our mission and values, but also because we think it complements the suite of funding that is already existing available. We did a very quick analysis of the emergency funds that have been opened up very generously by other funders, and we counted around 16 open funds that are going on at the moment and are available sort of globally depending on where you are. So we think the next phase that we're currently designing will complement this emergency triage fund that's already available. Alan and Richard asked what the best way for me to speak about what the best way to apply is. We don't currently have a mechanism or any open calls available. So I would say if you have an idea, we do want to hear from you. Obviously, we can't travel at the moment or attend anything. So we're just really like wanting to hear from you guys that are out there doing the hard work. So the best way to get in touch is probably through Alan and Richard, who'll be able to put you in touch with me if that's okay with you guys.
Happy to do that.
Fantastic.
Or also, I mean, leave your email address in the chat box later if you like as well. That may be
Brilliant.
useful. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And we also have a contact form on our website, and I promise you that does get picked up. It's not going into the ether. So if you want to drop us a short note there, you can do. So I think I've gone slightly over, but so I'll stop there, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Shuwei. Listen, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that are already in the chat box. Nokvi says that he's now, I'm now working for the newly established Cambodian Journalists Alliance, or Cambodia. So it is much appreciated if Shuwei could give me more instructions whether OSF is open for new partners and how we can reach out to get funding, which you addressed in some of that.
Sure.
Earlier stuff. You guys, yeah.
So new partners, absolutely. We're always on the lookout for new partners. So do get in touch, and we'll help where we can and respond.
Then this strange person named Jakub Gorniczki says, he's asking, what were the pivot directions you mentioned? And what was the attitude towards going this way?
Well, Jakub, I think you can answer that question yourself pretty well, no? I think you're one of the people that pivoted. Do you want to speak here? I don't want to speak for you.
Feel free to jump in, Jakub. Answer your own question.
I'm kind of making lunch here. Yes, I am. I'm kind of making lunch here, so let me leave the kitchen.
Shall we come back to you later, Jakub?
No, it's fine. I'm switching the rooms.
Okay.
No, actually, was curious more to hear about others. Yes, that is true. We have been. So maybe I will start with the attitude. I would say that initially it was frustration when you have a plan which, not even that it doesn't work. Basically, you find the nearest trash and you put it there, and you have to come up with a new one, and there is very limited time to come up with a new one. Our membership program and offering all of that, which took months of work, and I know Federica is here, she was helping us with this. I'm not saying it was destroyed, it may come back at some point, but we've had crazy 7 weeks, like really crazy 7 weeks. Almost no sleep, constant fight to basically get it on track. Right now, the attitude is, I'm not gonna say relaxed, in pandemic times relaxed, but more like, we see that certain normalization starts to show up, and that is fine. And our pivot direction was, well, we had to take our event online, which was supposed to be the heart of the membership. The second pivot was the whole membership offering, which was supposed to be centered around event, around deals with companies and so on. That all is gone. We've had to come up with new ones, and we've had to introduce new tools. So We are right now building this tool called Radar, which gathers responses to various COVID-19 effects. I'll drop a link to in the chat to this. So that's one. That's basically me. And I have to go back to the chicken. Sorry.
All the best to your chicken. All my love to your chicken. Listen, guys, I actually had a question for Shuwei, but I'm going to come back to that later. It's something that I'm curious about for all the grant makers and the funders here. But I just wanted to know if our next Shuwei, thank you for that. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but we're stick around. We're going to come back to you later as part of the discussion after we're all done. Rasmus, are you online? I feel like one of those radio hosts. Rasmus, do we have you? There you are.
I am here. Can you hear me?
And I just wanted to say to the possibly few people that don't know Rasmus, Rasmus is a giant in the industry. He not literally, he is not a giant, but he also apart from running the Reuters Institute of Journalism at Oxford, he also teaches political comms. He's an actual professor. Rasmus is one of their digital news report, and I know Federica is also here from the RISJ. Welcome, Federica. Their digital news report is a thing of beauty. We have all benefited from the insights and analytics across our media ecosystem. Rasmus is somebody that Alan and I look up to together with all of you as one of the most incisive, exciting minds out there. Rasmus, all yours.
Thanks very much. That's a very kind introduction. That was Alex, I think. I mean, I have to say that, I mean, that's very nice of you to say. I think even more, I was happy when you said at the beginning that what brings people together on this call is compassion. I think it's important to stress we can only get through this crisis together. And I'm glad to see so many people finding time in a really difficult situation to come together like this and think about how we can support one another and help one another through this difficult time where there is arguably more need than ever for the work that all of you do, but also even more challenges than we had in the situation that was already challenging enough before the virus started spreading. So just very briefly about who we are at the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism and what we do, and then on to the particular initiative that I think is the occasion for me to be part of this conversation. The mission of the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism is to explore the future of journalism worldwide. We are part of the University of Oxford, and we try to engage with journalists and editors and news media executives all over the world through debate, engagement, and research. So we have programs for mid-career journalists. We do leadership development activities that Federica is heading for us for editors and executives in the industry. And then we do research, which we try to make as accessible and timely and relevant for people like yourself who are making important decisions about how you help yourself and your colleagues and your organizations through this situation. All of that research we try to make publicly available so that people can make good use of it for themselves. And generally, we don't sort of tell people how to do their jobs. There's not one way, there's not one right solution to all the different issues we face. But I suppose at a very basic level that we believe the same way that we believe that journalism helps society make more better decisions by making it more informed, even if the information is sometimes sort of quite tough and not necessarily welcome news. We hope that we can, at the best of our modest ability, play a similar role vis-a-vis journalism and help journalism make more better decisions by being more informed. Not because the information is always sort of good news, if you will, but I suppose we believe at a very fundamental level that informed people make better decisions on the basis of their values, their aspirations, and their goals in their contexts, which they know better than we would ever do. So the particular thing we're trying to do in this situation is just sort of the recognition that early on, as the coronavirus started spreading across the world and governments started responding, I would begin getting emails sort of 2 or 3 times a day from editors and executives in the industry writing, if they were British, they would write something like, "It's really rather tough out here," which is sort of British for "we're absolutely fucked." And I started sort of hearing numbers of the sort of business impact of the lockdown measures and the crisis on both nonprofits and commercial news media across the world, and was glad to see that a number of funders who are already really important in this space, many of whom are on this call, were starting to think about how can they, in addition to their long-term priorities, also try to step up in this situation and to the best of their ability help people get through it. And one sort of setting for that conversation was one of the sort of advisory conversations around the initiative that Illuminate and the BBC Media Action have been working on for some time with many people on the call, the idea of an international fund for public interest media to provide long-term philanthropic funding support for independent news media globally. And in an advisory conversation around that, I suppose we came to sort of the joint view that the rather catchingly named IFPIM is a long-term initiative, but that there is a sort of a fundamental challenge here of sequencing, which is that there won't be a long-term if there isn't a short-term. And the hard truth that we face as an industry and a profession is that this could be an extinction event for a lot of independent news media across the world. And I don't say that lightly or with any sort of satisfaction, but just to sort of recognize that I think, you know, this will be very different in different countries around the world. It'll depend a lot on sort of government measures and how effective various lockdowns are in actually containing the pandemic and bringing us to a better place when contact tracing, testing, and in the future vaccines hopefully are made available. But just to put sort of a big number on it, I think we should sort of recognize that we face a situation where the newspaper industry alone is looking at a double-digit billion-dollar decline in their 2020 revenues. So to put that into context, we're looking at a sort of a decline in one calendar year that is probably going to be comparable about to what the decline has been in the last sort of 5 to 10 years. And I think we can all recognize the last 5 to 10 years have been pretty tough. So that I think gives us a sense of the scale of the problem. So what are we going to do about that? Well, you know, I'd be delighted if I had sort of a magic ATM where we could sort of compensate for this in the short run. Sadly, of course, no one has that. But I suppose what we agreed with a number of founding members is the creation of something that we call the Independent News Emergency Relief Coordination. Again, rather catchingly, acronym is INERC. You can really tell that I was a civil servant once. And the idea of that is really very simple, if you will. We're trying to do one very specific thing and nothing else. And that very specific thing is to try to bring together funders who are in a position to provide emergency funding relief for independent news media. It is to create a temporary and supplementary forum through which we can collect evidence about what is the situation that different news media around the world face. We will keep that information entirely confidential at the Reuters Institute, but we will produce top-line analysis for the funders, and some of this we will make more broadly publicly available to inform their decision-making. And we will create a forum where the funders can coordinate amongst themselves so that they ensure that they supplement one another rather than duplicate one another, so as many as possible can benefit from the emergency funding relief that is made available by the funders. So this is a sort of temporary supplementary initiative. There are really important initiatives already happening. I mentioned IFPIM as one. There is the Journalism Funders Forum in Europe. There are the media impact funders that operate out of the US but with global reach. And there are many individual foundations, again, many of them represented on this call, as well as, for that matter, private companies engaged in corporate charity who are doing their own things in this space. But I suppose what we are trying to do through the Independent News Emergency Relief Coordination is to try to collect data and be able to analyze that and turn that around to help funders make decisions about where the limited resources they have available can make the biggest difference to help people like all of you who are on this call as much as is possible in this situation. This is an open collaboration. We started it with a group of founding members, all of whom are involved in the IFPIM conversations. We are open to other funders joining the initiative, and I hope to be able to announce a number of new members of the group in the coming days. And of course, we also hope that the work we do can supplement and empower all the other important things that are being done to help journalists and independent news media around the world, whether that is training, advocacy, or long-term capacity building that Shui and others have talked to. So we will try to help funders coordinate, see where the need is greatest and where they can make the biggest difference. In terms of the very specific thing that Alan and Rashad asked me to speak to is how to apply for the money. That is go through the funders. We don't have a pot of money ourselves. The Reuters Institute, I think Shui described the Open Society Foundation as a very, very large organization. We are a very, very small organization. We don't have money. We don't have an endowment. We don't have funds and are not a funding organization in general. So we are not the ones to whom one should apply or who will be distributing funds, but we will ask people to share information with us so we can help funders make more informed decisions. And also as part of that, ask for permission to suggest you to funders for their consideration if you consent to that. So our task is data analysis and data gathering, analysis, and coordination. And of course, we hope over time that we can raise awareness and visibility in the wider philanthropic community and potentially also other institutions with money to encourage them to step up and recognize that if we are facing a situation that I think more and more public health authorities are recognizing it, not just a medical crisis, but also a communications crisis. If we don't invest in the infrastructure that enable free information around this crisis, we will be worse off during the crisis than we need to be. In that sense, we frankly need to protect independent news media so they can help protect us. And I hope that we can help be ambassadors for that argument to those who are in a position to actually step up and provide support.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rasmus. Very quick kind of question around the work that you're doing with INERC or INERC. How do you pronounce it? INERC.
Well, I would say INERC, but to each his own.
So from the data that you've collected so far and the knowledge that you've already acquired around this stuff, what have you seen in terms of gaps that you feel like funders are not paying enough attention to?
I mean, I wouldn't say not paying enough attention because I want to recognize that the funders are also in a difficult position. And I don't think in the spirit of sort of compassion that I think you're right to highlight at the outset of this call, I don't think this is sort of a time to point fingers at anybody. I think the shared concern that was in fact raised by the funders themselves and was part of the momentum behind creating this initiative, I think is the risk that in the absence of some form of data gathering and coordination, I think there is a risk that a lot of the very limited funding that will be available will go to a limited number of quite well-known organizations, and that equally important but less sort of globally famous or famous in the Anglosphere organizations who are equally worthy causes will not necessarily receive the same amount of attention or consideration. And if we can help in some way counterbalance that, then I think that's a tremendous service to the community. I mean, obviously, we're not in a situation where anyone is sort of get a jackpot and get more money than they need. So it's not to sort of take money away from others. But I suppose in some ways, a sort of a crude metaphor here is that we're trying to run a field hospital and trying to help funders make decisions about how they can help as many as possible get through this, rather than just sort of help the ones they know the best. Right.
Also, a very interesting question from Shui. Will there be information about donors and funders for grant seekers?
We're working on that. I'm really keen that we don't duplicate things that others are doing. So I think, as everyone on this call will know, there are a number already of sort of public repositories maintained by the Global Investigative Journalism Network and other and other entities. So if we're convinced that we can add value to those repositories, we will probably create one too. But I'm all for sort of do what you do best and link to the rest. And I don't want to create a situation where we start duplicating what others are already doing well.
Excellent. Rasmus, thank you so much. Guys, keep your questions coming. We're going to have more another Q&A at the end of when everybody's spoken. That was great, Rasmus. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to our friend Lars Bessel from IMS, or International Media Support. The thing about Lars is this: he is a true friend and champion of the media ecosystem in Asia. Some of you may already have worked with or know what work IMS does. They do incredibly deep work with media startups around the world. We first met IMS in Myanmar. The thing about Lars that I love, he used to work with UNDP before being head of Asia at IMS. The thing about Lars is he listens. I love his span of attention. Lars will always ask you that one extra question that he's interested in about why you do what you're doing. He's interested in your mission, not just your business. Lars, if you're ready, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Richard. Can you hear me? Is it fine? All right. Okay, great. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Richard. Can you just confirm that you can hear me?
Can definitely hear you loud and clear.
All
Wonderful.
right. Okay.
Just let Alan know
whenever
wherever you want the slides to go.
Yeah, there's a kind of a background slide up on IMS, but maybe we can wait a bit with the slides. That would be fine. So Alan, please, if you can you remove, and I'll let you know when to put them on. All right. Okay. Let me kick off. Thank you again, and it's so great to be in touch. Of course, it would have been a much more fun if we had been in Chiang Mai, all of us. But we have to live with this. Hopefully, we can soon all meet there again. Very quickly before I move on how we support media startups and how we work with them, let me just give a quick introduction of how we landed at that proposition from International Media Support's point of view. I'll be speaking mostly about Asia because that's what I'm responsible for. I'm also on this call. There's definitely one more colleague of mine, Helle Wahlberg, who is manager for our regional program focused on media startups. IMS, for those of you that don't know, we are a non-for-profit organization that works to support local media in countries affected by armed conflict, human insecurity, and to a large extent countries in political transitions. And we work to promote and foster public interest, independent journalism, very much like OSF also mentioned, and also on creating a safer and enabling policy and legal environment for media and journalism to flourish. We employ at the moment around 100 people around the world. We work in about 30 countries across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. We have both global programs, regional programs, and primarily national programs. And I'm stressing that because that's really also the way we work, is to establish longer-term national programs where we identify partners, including media outlet partners that we can then engage with on a longer term basis. And we do bring financial resources, but very much also we look at it as a partnership, go into partnership projects and develop and progress jointly through these programs. So we're not a grant providing organization like OSF and others. It's more like a longer term media development approach that we have. But I'll get a bit more into that. Before that, let me just say that the work in Asia has primarily been focusing on safety of journalists and on policy and legal environment and media reform processes, but only until a couple of years ago. So we realized when doing an assessment of how could we really achieve our goals and mandate in the region that we needed to focus a lot more on public interest journalism. So we did an assessment of that in the Asia landscape, and one of the conclusions we draw was that sadly that public interest journalism, on independent journalism, is really challenged, and also that there's a lack of it, and we also saw that journalism in general probably is more focused on serving the interests not of the public but of other interests, of the power holders, military, government, politicians, huge commercial interests. And of course that was a bit of a grim realization, although not breaking news, but it was of course a bit sad. So we digged a bit deeper down into the landscape and also came across very innovative media outlets and that really takes public interest journalism seriously, such as Malaysia Kini, Rappler, Wire in India, and others. And we gathered those, and also to dig deeper down how they approached journalism in the region and how did they overcome challenges. And we really came to realize that there's something here for an organization like others to look more into, with a view to lifting good journalism in the Asia region. But we also, so we started to dig deeper down in each country through a mapping exercise and found a whole forest underneath of media startups that somehow shared the same values, the same approach to journalism, that were engaging audiences very seriously, that use technology in very, very innovative ways, that also took underserved communities seriously in reaching out to them, and in general, all the kind of values that we saw was the future of journalism, and that we saw was needed to both create resilience of journalism and create survival of journalism, but also to ensure that journalism makes the difference that it needs to do, and we all wanted to do. So in this process, we also met Splice, Richard, Alan at events, and that was a great pleasure and realizations to seeing that suddenly there was a new organization in Asia that shared the same vision. And we really, I think, had this realization of jointly sharing this vision of a radical change taking place in the region, and that we could somehow come together and pull that off and see what we can do jointly. So a number of our activities have also been together with Splice. Let me move on to how we support and work with media startups. So maybe, Alan, could you help with the slides? And maybe I can say in the meantime that of course in this process over the past couple of years of getting this work better organized, we've met with a lot of you on this call also to organize gatherings in Jakarta, in Seoul, in Chiang Mai, obviously back to back with Splice Beta in Kuala Lumpur recently. And so on, also joined it with Malaysia Kini and the Kini Academy there. So basically slowly building up a network across the region of media startups. And I will get to our COVID response briefly at the end also in this connection. So basically 5 areas we work around. One is getting an overview and mapping and creating a directory of startups, building cross-country collaborations, peer-to-peer learning and sharing of best practices. We also work intensely with a number of startups on developing foundational strategies for where to go, and we support financially strategic projects and innovative projects that we see having regional value. That means not only value for the startup itself, but actually something that others can also learn from. I'll get a bit more into that. And then we support the media startup community by support to Splice Beta or other events and working with strategic partners and targeted media outlets. And next slide, please, Ellen. Yeah, so this is one project that we have started, which is to create a database and a directory of media startups in the region. And this is something that we think we're working around 3 use cases. One, for startups wanting to be discovered by funders or finding funding opportunities. There also could be an interest for grant makers and investors to wanting to find opportunities to fund or invest in media startups. Could also be an interesting resource for academics and researchers wanting data and for research in the media startup space in Asia. This is also partly inspired by the work by Sempra Media in Latin America that have done a fantastic directory of startups there. Next slide. Yeah, and then we have this area of building cross-country collaboration, peer-to-peer learning, sharing of best practices. So you can hear our work is very much focused on ensuring synergies and learnings between startups in the region. We think there's each and every one is doing some amazing, inspiring work that others can learn a lot from. So we try to facilitate that to happen through meetings and workshops where we also bring in expertise and building facilitators of people knowing about business opportunities and or safety, digital safety, organizational structures, how to engage audiences better, etc. Into basically having workshop with a number of 15 to 20 startups or fewer selection when that makes sense. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is one of the areas just to show a sample of working with startups on this on the development of media strategies and foundation for the media companies to go forward, where we work intensely for a number of months with startups to develop a strategy document that will touch upon vision and mission and values, branding, etc., and also move into the 5 pillars outlined here in content production, use of technology and platforms, business revenue streams, organizational and safety issues, and outreach to audiences. Next slide, please. Yeah, then this is one example of support to a strategic project. This one for Frontier Myanmar on a membership model, and that we really think could provide value for Frontier itself, of course, but also for other startups in the region. So the Frontier membership journey that they've been through, and Sonny shared this. Thank you, Sonny, at I think the first Low-Res for all of us on the experience they have been through on that. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then the support for the community. Here's some photographs that most of you remember from last year. And we also try to do other activities related to community building. Yeah, I think, is there one more slide? Yeah. So so that's the framing of our work in this area of work. By all means, if you think if you're a startup and have interest in what you're hearing here, would think you would like to be part of these community and networking activities, if you think you are sitting with something that could be highly valuable for others, do get in touch. Our emails are here on this slide to reach out to myself or Helle, and we will engage further with you. Maybe just briefly on our COVID response, where also have been of course a lot of attention on the past couple of months. A couple of things we have done. We have collected practices from startups all over the world on how to cover the crisis in innovative ways, in useful ways for audiences, and that they are available on our websites, where we have a special COVID-19 page. So by all means, study that. In the aftermath of that, we have also organized webinars around it to share these experiences. We have also been able to restructure our programs to respond better to the crisis and be very flexible to our partners in terms of the work that they already do. Also, we have been able to provide some rapid response emergency funds, and we are in dialogue with some of our back donors on a rapid response mechanism for emergency funds. So it's of course also very interesting for us to hear what Rasmus outlined, and I think we definitely have interest in hearing more about that. I think that's all I will say for now, but do by all means if you have any questions.
Thanks, Lars. I love the way that IMS really seems to work along the entire spectrum of what not just media startups need, but what the entire ecosystem needs. Everything from analyzing business practices to emergency interventions to like research activity like we have going on for Splice Base. It really does cross the entire spectrum of you tap into every a milestone on that media startup journey, and that's across many countries. I'm going to run a few questions for you. Ariam, who I think has just started working for Coda Story in Tbilisi, in Georgia. She asks, is there an interest in developing relationships with startups in Eastern Europe or Eurasia? My newsroom in Georgia would certainly fit into the first bucket of use cases.
Great question, and indeed, and that reminds me also to Jakob, who's also got in touch with me that indeed we would like that, and I think similarly to what the first Splice Low-Res also had to share these experiences. We have organized an event in the fall in Copenhagen, where we try to, because we work in the different regions and are very regionally organized, but it also enabled us to bring these the startup community together from various regions. And so what it will not, Eastern Europe will not fall under my responsibility, but we work very closely with the other regional heads, and I can certainly put you also in touch with the team focusing on Eastern Europe.
Nice. Here's another question from our friend Patrick Bowler, who works with the Spectacular Pangolin project. Question for Lars: is the startups list publicly accessible?
That's definitely the intention, yes, that it will be. And we're developing this jointly with Richard and Alan at the moment, and we have done a prototype of it, and we're discussing these different use cases and also accessibility, whether all information should be accessible, because some of it might be sensitive or should not be publicly available, but where other pieces of the information definitely can be. So there might be variations of that, but I think at the outset it's intended to be available.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that for Patrick. Please. And for everybody's benefit. Sorry, I can't help being enthusiastic. This database and this this whole machine that we want to build is literally like a crunch base for media startups. We can't wait to be able to build this out and see the insights and the sort of a dynamic database that we get from this, including reports and research. Question from Shuwei. What, in your opinion, have been some of the most interesting responses to COVID that you've seen in startups? Nice question.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think, well, there are a lot. If I should highlight one, I think was at the time when I think there was lots of uncertainties and there was a lot of statistics, dramatic statistics going on. One of our partners in the Philippines, Puma podcast, focused on podcast, I think did some amazing small stories or testimonials of how life is with Corona in across the country, and coming across with some very interesting human interest stories that were shared broadly in the podcasting space. I think those were to me some of the most I think interesting cases, but also, of course, that we saw a lot of in our research. I think I would highlight those. Also, those that really are, for instance, in Pakistan, we had an example of a startup that we work with called Log Shugak that reported at the village level of how the situation is at village level and what can be done about it in villages in Pakistan, in Punjab. I think so. Those are some of the highlights. But by all means go into to the website where we have also covered these from across the regions where we work.
Nice, thank you, Lars. Thank you so much for that. I love these conversations. Thank you. I'm going to jump to our next speaker. Alex Fenby works with Facebook. He works with journalists. We first met Alex at Splice Beta in 2019. And there were two things we noticed about Alex. He helped everybody at the Facebook booth that they had there. He was super helpful. He also knew everybody that he came in contact with, all the media startups. He was right there in the middle of things, introduced himself and made friends. Alex is a true friend, champion of independent media, and we depend on his judgment. Alex, if you're ready.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to try and share my screen. So, can you see my screen?
Not just yet,
Not
but
yet.
now we can.
Oh, here it comes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yep. Awesome.
So first of all, thank you, Alan and Rashad, for the invitation, and just generally thank you to everyone for the incredible journalism and reporting that we're seeing both on Facebook and off the platform in what is incredibly difficult times. I'm going to divide my quick presentations into two parts. The first one is to give you a little bit of context in terms of Facebook's mission and what we do in news partnerships. And then the second half of the presentation will be the very kind of practical initiatives that we have currently in place to support the community in APAC at the moment. To the question earlier on, we had very well laid out plans for the whole year, and we had to pivot very, very quickly, both in terms of budgets and programs and initiatives to this virtual world to continue to work with journalism in APAC. So as you can see there on the screen, Facebook's mission is to give people the power to build community and to bring the world closer together. When people come to Facebook, they want to connect and they want to feel part of a community, whether it's with family and friends or whether it's with people with shared interest. And news and media content plays an incredibly important role in that. both in terms of how people connect and also in how they want to discuss what matters to them. For news partnerships, our kind of work is to work very closely with news partners to strengthen the connections between publishers and audiences, both on and off the platform, and also to help them in terms of business models and sustainable revenue streams. Broadly, our work focuses on 3 key areas. So the first one is what we call partner management, and that is working with partners on their immediate business objectives and on their performance on the platform. The second pillar is strategic product initiatives, and that will be working closely with partners on product adoption as they seek to create content, to develop audiences, to create engagement. So it could be things around video, around watch, around instant articles. It could also be product around monetization, such as in-stream ads, and increasingly direct reader revenue products like subscription or fan funding. And then our third pillar is what we might describe as integrity and programs. Integrity is specifically the work we do around third-party fact-checking and programs, whether it's training days, whether it's workshops, whether it's industry conferences, such as the wonderful Splice Beta last year, are all aimed at working closely with publishers to help them with their goals, both on and off the platform. I wanted to share some of the examples that we've had in the past year. We in Asia rolled out 2 accelerator programs, one for video in Southeast Asia and one for reader revenue in Australia and New Zealand. Accelerator programs are long-term training, coaching, and grant initiatives where we kind of work very closely with a community of partners to take their strategies to the next level. And I think the real value there beyond the grants is really the training and the coaching, where we give our partners access to the best-in-class digital content practitioners from leading media companies across the world. And in the 2 accelerators that we did last year in video and in reader revenue, we saw some fantastic results. Khao in Thailand participated in our video accelerator, and out of that developed a new type of video series around human interest. The first one they released garnered 4 million views within the first 24 hours. With the reader revenue accelerator that we did in Australia, we saw Schwartz Media in Melbourne. Out of the learnings of the accelerator, they reviewed their buy flow and the positioning of their various call to action buttons, and they saw a 500% increase in clicks through to their subscription pages. The spin-off in New Zealand, who were also in Splice Beta last year, also participated in the reader revenue, and they, out of the learnings of that, saw a 250% month-on-month spike in membership signups. We also work very closely with individual companies. Again, with Khao, we work closely on their video monetization strategy. They saw a remarkable increase in in-stream ad revenue. And then more recently, as one of the quick pivots and the initiatives in working with partners in the region, we saw 7 in Australia, the SCMP in Hong Kong, and the Straits Times in Singapore collaborate and co-host a Facebook Watch broadcast on COVID, where they invited government officials and health experts. And combined, that special has generated over 26 million views to date. All of these examples are available on the Facebook Journalism Project website if you're interested in reading more about them. Now, in terms of this pivot that we've all had to make, including us at Facebook, in how we respond to COVID, we recently announced a $2 million investment to support Asia Pacific newsrooms during COVID-19. And we rolled that out working with a series of associations such as Splice, the International Center for Journalism, WANIFRA, and to develop a series of grants as well as training and coaching programs to support partners with their immediate needs, but also with their long-term content strategies and business models as they might emerge out of COVID. Splice Lights On is something that we've been working with Alan and Richard and our friends at Splice about distributing small grants immediately as soon as possible to support emerging news companies in Asia financially impacted by COVID. The money goes directly to the publishers to allow them to continue the great work that they are doing in covering COVID right now. And some of the ideas on which the grants might be used could be things like commissioning freelancers to report in COVID, especially in locations lacking sufficient coverage at the moment, potentially on developing products such as a dedicated COVID newsletter or a hub for COVID-related resources, like this low-res series, potentially creating online events to engage and meet with your audiences, purchasing hardware or software tools to facilitate remote content creation, and many other ideas that you can submit in your application. The application is still open, and I'm sure we have, and Splice will be sharing the link with you guys again. I want to get into some training looking beyond the actual grants, and again, in terms of some of the practical initiatives that we're rolling out. So speaking of virtual content creation, as I mentioned last year, we ran a very successful video accelerator in Asia Pacific. And we are now working with ICFJ to deliver a 4-part webinar series on virtual content creation. The mentors who participated in the video accelerator are kindly putting together a curriculum. The first one is actually launching this Friday. And again, we'll share the link if you guys aim to register. And they will cover key topics around virtual video, such as how to adjust your digital video workflow when working remotely. We've got Alba from AJ Plus Espanol, who will deliver that webinar. Jacob Templin from Quartz will do a webinar on apps, accessories, and best practices to turn your phone into a professional quality video camera. Alan Harbachak from BuzzFeed News will do a webinar on the art and science of remote video interviews. And finally, Nuno will close the series on the 22nd of May with a session on how to remain creative during COVID-19 when we're all stuck at home. We are also looking at transitioning our accelerator program into a kind of virtual environment. And in the coming weeks, we will be launching a series of scaled webinars as well as an accelerator on direct reader revenue in Asia Pacific. Research such as the one that Splice conducted with the low-res survey, and we've heard from so many other partners across the region how COVID have drastically impacted their advertising business. And we've had so many conversations about partners looking to find new alternative revenue streams, including direct reader revenue. So the webinars, which will be available to everybody to attend, the dates have yet to be fixed, and we'll share that with you guys once they have been, are going to be delivered by former New York Times Executive Director for Cross-Platform Monetization, Tim Griggs, and his team of experts. And the webinars will be around subjects such as how to build the right product and content to develop loyal audiences, how to build a frictionless buy flow to ensure conversions, what are some of the retention tactics that you may have to retain your paying readers. These webinars will be recorded and then will be available to yourself and to newsrooms across Asia beyond the time that they are actually delivered as an asset that you can refer to over time. And then finally, I just wanted to mention one other kind of practical initiative that we've done, which is the Digital Media Bootcamp, which we actually launched in April. And this is a series of training programs to support journalists working from home during COVID. I think the intention there, as everybody was adjusting to a new reality of working from home, adjusting to a new lifestyle, was to deliver a series of webinars which were bite-sized and in-person and interactive. And these are 15 to 20-minute lessons from Facebook staff, but also from external speakers on key relevant subjects right now, such as video, such as monetization, and so on. One of the interesting things that the community asked for and which we delivered as part of these series was that as everybody's adjusting to this new lifestyle, we also include webinars on mind, body, and soul wellness sessions, on tips on nutrition and on exercise and on sleep as you're working from home during this very difficult period. Again, we will share the link with you guys if you want to register to get information about some of the upcoming series that we'll be launching. So that's pretty much it in terms of what I have today. Again, the Facebook Journalism Project, if you visit the website, you'll be able to see all of the latest programs, the case studies, and all the works that we're doing with news organizations in Asia Pacific, and is a great tool to refer to. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Alex. Really excited to see the kind of work that you guys are doing. And I think, you know, the pivot that Facebook has done in this space has been tremendous, right? Over the course of what, 2-3 months, to see what you've turned into COVID support for partners. I think that's really quite amazing. We also like the work that David Grant has been doing as part of the Accelerator project. I think, you know, the knowledge that's being shared there has been really helpful as well. So if everyone's, you know, if everyone can see those links that we've put into the chat box, you know, by all means, go check them out. There's a lot to be learned from some of the Accelerator programs that Facebook has been running. Also, I wanted to just quickly, just since, you know, Alex mentioned Splice Lights On, just to give you a quick 30-second update on what's going on here. So we have received a lot of applications for this one. We're really excited to see what the community has been applying to do in terms of projects. We are trying to get the word out to all of you as of this week. As to whether you've been successful in receiving the grant, and you know, just be patient with us. We are dealing with a lot of applications here. We're also trying to find as many ways as to make this happen quickly for you. So, quick update on that one. Also, let me just quickly jump on a couple of questions here for Alex. Here we go. Patrick's question. Can I be that pestering participant and ask another question? Yes, you can, Patrick. I'd like to know from Alex and possibly all the other speakers how they look at impact and impact measurement and what trends they see there. So, Alex, why don't you go for this one first, and then we'll bring in the rest later in the show. Alex, you might be on mute. You are on mute.
So how we measure impact, I think first of all, I think our key incentive is to see media partners thrive both on and off the platform. And so, as I mentioned earlier, our work revolves around the business objectives of those partners. And if they are gunning for audience development, or if they're gunning for engagement or monetization, we will work very, very closely with those guys to seek and to try and get them to achieve those results. Obviously, our resources are finite, so we organize ourselves in different manners, where we might have the news partnership team working closely with a limited numbers of partners, but we also try and do as much of our work at scale, whether it's through conferences or workshops or other types of training sessions, so we can touch on as many partners as possible. Impact for us is to see the community grow, is to see in all of the aspects of measurements around the performance on the platform, also in terms of integrity around misinformation and those other areas. And you know, we want to just see that there's a growing and thriving community on the platform, I would say. But we let the partners set their business objectives and let's set what they want to achieve on the platform. And then it's a question of us working as closely with them as possible to help them with those objectives.
Cool. Let's do one more question. We are running a bit behind now, where we have one more speaker in Peru. But very quickly, Alex, question here from Sue Valentine from OSF. Kudos to Alex for Facebook's support of journalism, but what happens when a newsroom builds their audience engagement on Facebook and then the algorithm changes? What can newsrooms do to safeguard against this?
It is the question I get asked the most often around the algorithm. I think that Facebook is complementary from owned and operated assets, and you know, building a thriving media company, I think, has to be owned and operated as well as on the platform. I think that obviously there's the overall algorithm and how it prioritizes content. As you know, a couple of years ago, there was the introduction of meaningful social interactions, which did indeed prioritize family and friends over public content. But we are constantly reviewing the work that we are doing with our partners to actually elevate high quality content on the platform. So within the news environment, we are trying to work with publishers in elevating, whether it's through video or whether it's through instant articles or whether it's through increasingly groups that we see, the quality content that our partners are doing. And based on the content that is being developed, the way you engage your audiences is going to guarantee, or it's going to support your efforts to maintain a strong level of, you know, engagement and performance on the platform as well.
Alex, thank you very much. I'm sure there are going to be plenty of more questions for you, but keep them coming in the chat box and we'll send that around to everyone. Alex has also put links for the Facebook journalism project in there, so feel free to jump to those. I'm gonna prove you look very ready. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I really soft? Can everybody hear me? I've just been asked to speak louder. So let me tell you about Prue. For all practical purposes, as far as we're concerned, Prue practically runs the Judith Nielsen Institute for Journalism and Ideas. Which, you know, I didn't actually say that. We're going to edit that out of this. She works in Sydney, and Prue has been a journalist. She's been all over the world. She's done stuff in the Washington Post, the FT, the New York Times, and the BBC. She, interestingly enough, for being somebody in charge of a very large fund, is also a media startup founder, which I love the juxtaposition of these two sides of Prue's life. She co-founded New Narratives, not to be confused with Kirsten Hahn's New Narrative here. And it supports investigative journalism in West Africa. Prue and I met at a conference in Bonn last year, and she was in the middle of everything. By the end of it, you know how you make that conference buddy? Prue and I became conference buddies. She told me amazing stories about her work and her life. Prue, all yours. So happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. Amazing for me. I have spent 16 years working in Africa, and I've now moved into this Asian space, and I'm so thrilled. And what an amazing, vibrant space it is, and with you guys at the center. And we really would love to have you work in Africa at some point. But look, I'm just thrilled to be seeing so many familiar faces here and people who I've been planning to reach out to, and was looking forward to doing that in Chiang Mai, but I know we'll get another chance soon. Yes, thank you for stressing that I have spent by far the majority of my life being a grantee. So I am totally understanding the point of view that most of you are coming from, sitting on the other side of the fence. In fact, I've only been in this role for a year, and this institution is only slightly has only been around for slightly longer than I got there. But look, I know a lot of people are interested to know more about what we're doing. It had been, you can hear probably that I'm originally Australian, but I had been overseas for 20 years, most of that in the States, but also in Africa, where there is just so much more, just incredible amounts of philanthropy money. And so I was quite shocked to see how little there was in the Asian region. And thrilled to learn more from everyone about what they're doing. And I just wanted to also say that in running New Narratives, it was always about understanding that you can train journalists until they're blue in the face. And in fact, a lot of them were getting blue in the face in West Africa. And that if they didn't have independent resources to do independent reporting, they couldn't actually do independent journalism. So I've been very critical of the of media development agencies in the aid world for not understanding just how important the business model is. And so I'm thrilled to see so much really important work being done in Asia. And what a moment. As Rasmus said, potentially an extinction event just when so many startups were actually getting humming. Devastating, but look, I do hope that there has been a lot of groundwork put in the last 5 years. A lot of donors refocusing their support on actually supporting the business model. So let's hope that can help more people get through this very challenging period. So to give you a bit more about Jay and I, this amazing woman, Judith Nielsen, originally from Africa, but spends a lot of time in China these days. No background in journalism, but saw a need, and so she backed this first institute with 100 million Australian dollars, which is less now in US dollars, but it's about 65-70 million. So we have a budget of about 3 million a year to support journalism. We've been very focused in the first year on Australia because many of you will know it is facing serious crises in Australian media. But we are very much learning and very much listening, and we are starting to reach out into the region. And we do hope to do more in the Asia Pacific region. We've actually been in touch with a few of you already about projects, including I'm looking forward to doing something with Alan and Rashad in the Pacific soon. We have been supporting some collaborations. We're very much about supporting journalism right now. So we've been in touch with some media houses in the region to support reporting collaborations in the next year. And we have big plans to keep growing in the region. I personally hope that more Australian donors understand or Australian philanthropists understand the importance of investing in media and how to do it well. So we're very much pioneers from that sense. A few more things that I would mention that are relevance for the Asian region. We're very keen to promote interactions between journalists in the region and also between Australia and the region. There's been Australia really has not just been siloed from Asia, it's been siloed from the States and Europe, certainly Africa and Latin America as well. So we're hoping to promote that. We already took 12 Australian journalists to Hong Kong last year. We were destined for Indonesia next month, and we were actually hoping to invite some Asian journalists to join us on that trip as well. And that will happen as soon as we can make it happen. And we're coming to a town near all of you at some point soon in the next few years, and we want to do that annually. We also had planned to send 3 Asian women journalists to a cyber conference with Anya Shifran at Columbia University this month. We have also, with the Walkley Foundation, I saw Louisa is on the call, opened a call for freelancer grants to report on Asia. I know as a long-term freelancer myself that there are a lot of grants that have been available to American and Europeans specifically. This one, because of the Walkley Foundation's charter, is for Australian journalists and for permanent residents of Australia, but we will be looking to expand that into the region as well. So there's a lot happening, early days, and I'm really looking forward to meeting you all and learning more, and hoping to inspire more philanthropists to see how we can be helpful in the region. Just quickly on COVID-19, we have done a quick support to see how we can be helpful. We've committed to about 500,000 US. It's primarily gone to community radio in Australia, to fact checking, to some research on the response of Indigenous media to show how important that has been in the communications response, but also to a lot of Australian media that has seen its budgets for freelance and casual contributors staff drop off. So we've been very helpful to a lot of media around the country, especially small media, to just keep those freelance journalists on through this crisis. But, you know, early days, you probably know Australia is looking very much like it might even be able to eradicate COVID. So we may have to start thinking about a COVID part 2 response going forward. And who knows how that's going to look. Oh, and one other thing I should mention is that it looks very likely, and this is sort of off the record. You won't quote me on this, I'm sure, but it looks very likely that we're going to host the Global Investigative Journalism Conference in Sydney next year. So I know a lot of you, I've seen a lot of you at these around the world. This will be the first time the global conference would be in the Asia Pacific region. So we're really excited about that, and we hope to see a lot of you there. That's me.
What an amazing news. Can we announce it? We should be able to, right? So this is GIJN's next year's thing that
global
they wanted to put
conference.
together. Oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
Well done.
Yes.
And this is going to be in Sydney?
Let's hope, you know,
yeah.
COVID-19 willing. That's the plan.
If you don't mind, I'd like to ask a quick question around, you know, some of the work that you've been doing in Australia. So the state of local media, you know, by that I mean geographically small, regional ones in small towns. Is there any effort that's being done on your part to help support some of these, and what's possible, and where are the gaps?
I see Simon Carrera on here, who is thick in the weeds on this at the moment, but I'll give you my very quick take. And I always caveat this by saying, despite my accent, I'm a newbie to Australia in many ways. But what has happened has been a lot of media houses that were heavily print in regional areas, still a lot of older readers, including my dad, who pick up the local newspaper and print. And the media houses were still making primarily the majority of their income in print. So that has been ravaged in the advertising market has been ravaged. I think we saw News Corp, which has something like 70% of the newspapers in Australia. Shocking, I know. It saw something like 45% drop in revenue this quarter. So they have shut down a lot of regional media players. A lot of mastheads have been shut down. It was some, number in the scores. It could be up to 100 regional media houses have been shut down now. The government, it's obviously a big concern to the government. The government in power at the moment is the Conservative government, and part of the coalition is the National Party, which represents regional Australia. And so they have been, there's been a lot of pressure on the government to do something. The Competition and Consumer Commission here recommended $50 million be given to support regional media in Australia. We've seen 5 million of that carved out already, and hopefully the rest of it will come soon. And others are doing work. Simon's doing some work. Google is doing some work to support, and Facebook may well be too. Forgive me if I haven't checked in, to try and help these media houses, go digital and find new revenue streams. But look, I've had the benefit of seeing some of the work that you've been doing in the region. I'm editing a report that Kirsten Hahn did for Deutsche Welle at the moment on Myanmar Frontier, The Reporter, and others. And I don't think that we've got enough of that sort of stuff happening here. I'm not seeing enough work being done to understand how to monetize communities, build communities, and take advantage of those opportunities. So we need you here too, actually.
Thank you, Prue. I wanted to, in fact, open it up to, people who wanted to ask, especially the speakers, guys. We'd love to hear from you. But one of the things that, I wanted to jump in with a question, if that's okay. I did ask something earlier for Shuwei, but I'd love to ask this of you and Prue and Shuwei as well. I'm going to ask a newbie question. How do you differentiate between core organizational funding? We need to have these people doing the work they do, continue with the status quo, keep going, and between project and product related funding. We need you to do such and such thing, and this is our fund available for this media product. Is there, again, please feel free, anybody, who runs a fund or who has had funding themselves, how do you differentiate? Prue, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Shuwei.
I was saying, let Shuwei go first.
Shuwei, all yours.
Oh, thank you. That's a kind. So actually, we try not to do that as much as possible. And as I mentioned, we really try and support the organization and the mission and the values. And we really see any product development as in service to that mission. So whether or not you're trying to develop a new product in order to support the journalism, or develop a new audience segment to develop the journalism, we see that as integral to the organization. So we really don't try to differentiate at all. And actually, it's much more difficult for us to sort of determine which organizations we want to work with when a pitch comes in for project funding. So I have a colleague who's based in Sydney right now, who's isolating there. Actually, Prue, you should meet him, JJ Robinson. And
yes.
he used to run an independent journalism organization in the Maldives, the Independent Minivan magazine. And he would call applying for grants related on a project pretzeling, because it doesn't really fit what you want to do. It doesn't really fit the objective of the donor organization, but you kind of like twist yourself to fit the objectives in order to get some grant funding. And that's something that we really, really try and avoid, and which is why we try not to see the distinction between project or product development and organizational support. I'm happy to elaborate a little bit more on that if anyone needs to, if it's not clear.
Okay.
I would just add, we have not supported any product development, but we're certainly on the lookout for good ideas. And so, you know, if you've got some amazing idea that's going to you know, really help monetize communities and audiences, then we're definitely interested.
Well, we'll want your email address in the chat box soon, Prue.
Okay.
This is a crowd that is full of ideas, so coming at you. Alan, do you think we should wrap? Does everybody need a drink? Who needs a drink?
Yes. So, okay, let's quickly wrap this one up. We are running a bit over time, but you know, I think it's all good and you know, fantastic speakers out today. Just very quickly, want to thank you to the team at IMS for sponsoring this one and helping us put the our very fourth one together, our fourth Splice Low-Res. And judging by the numbers of concurrent users we had earlier, we were over 100, and I think that might just put us at a new record, don't you think, Rashad? Or am I just being
Very
disillusioned?
much a new record. We had more signups, we had more people on, you know, at the same time. It's all very exciting.
That's fantastic. Yeah, thank you again to all our speakers, you know, for making the time to share your insights with us. You know, we are always looking for feedback. So right after this, you'll be getting an email from us with feedback. And I think what we should also do is to include all of the links that have been, you know, published or sent into the chat box. I think a lot of this stuff is really helpful. Maybe we can get all of that into an email. We're going to be putting this video on YouTube alongside your announcement, Prue. So thank you for for breaking news here on Splice Low-Res.
It's not official yet.
It's not official until it appears.
Just between friends, exactly.
Also, we're working on our fifth Splice Low-Res, which should be coming up in a couple of weeks. We want to do something on how to rebrand your ask. So if you are seeking donations, you know, looking for ways to rebrand how you speak to your audience, this could be useful for you. Details for that will be coming up soon. We figure it's probably going to be in 2 weeks' time. So watch your inboxes for that one. Sponsors are always welcome to help keep this going. So, you know, if you are in a position of making sponsorship money happen, you should get in touch with us. Both our email addresses are at the bottom of that screen there. And this is the moment we've all been waiting for, BYOB. So if you want to go grab a beverage of choice and come back here, we will be back in about 2 minutes, and we can sit and have a chit chat and break more news the way Prue would do it.
You never know what might emerge.